Good evening. Today is Wednesday, March 6th, and this is the Hendrick Hudson Board of Education meeting. Can I have a motion to open the meeting?
Motion to open.
Second?
Second.
All in favor? Okay. The board will be going into executive session for the purpose of collective negotiations under the Taylor Law, medical, financial, credit, or employment history of a particular person or corporation, or matters leading to the appointment or employment history of a particular person or corporation, or matters leading to the appointment or employment or promotion or demotion or discipline or suspension or removal of a particular person or corporation. Can I have a motion to move to exec?
Motion.
Have a second?
Second.
All in favor? Okay, the board will be going on a tour of the middle school at approximately 6:15 p.m., which is open to the public. And we will conclude the tour and sit down for our agenda and our meeting at 7 p.m. We will be back. Good evening. Today is Wednesday, March 6th, and this is the Hendrick Hudson Board of Education meeting. The board has just returned from first executive session and then a walkthrough of Blue Mountain Middle School. Before we begin, maybe stand for the pledge.
The United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, and with liberty and justice for all.
Can I have a motion to approve the agenda this evening? Second. All in favor? Okay, great. Does anybody have anything to pull from the consent agenda? Can I have a motion to approve the consent agenda? Motion. Second.
Second.
All in favor? Okay. All right, that brings us to our presentation and discussion for this evening, which is about our proposed capital bond project. And I will turn it over to Mr. Trumbull.
Thank you, President Bernard. Good evening, everyone. The board has just returned from a tour of the Blue Mountain Middle School and some of the spaces that we are considering refurbishing, upgrading, enhancing as a part of our overall proposed capital bond project. This, should the board continue to move forward, the public will see by the 27th, the board adopt a proposition to include a proposed capital bond project on the scope of approximately $30 million on the May 21st vote, where you will also see the budget proposition and other propositions we can talk about. So to continue that conversation, we have architects from KSQ Design, Armand Quadrini here to help us to remind us of, and his colleague Worthy, to remind us of some of those projects that we are looking to explore in that proposed capital bond. So I will turn it over to Armand to take us through those projects.
Thank you so much. It's an honor to address the school board this evening and the community about the detailed planning that's gone into the potential 2024 referendum, which will be offered to the community on budget vote day in May. The agenda for this evening, 4 mission critical pillars. We'll review the overall bond cost. Our principals and other educators, as well as Mr. Crumley and the district administration, have been directly involved in the shaping of all the work that we've done so far. We're going to break down the costs by school. We have a pre-bond timeline and then talk about next steps. So it's so important to make sure that any initiatives that make it into the bond are directly related to the mission of the school district. And if you recall, in the 2018 bond, security was one of our pillars. We really tackled security, introduced it at all the schools, and we really sort of settled that business. The 4 that are very much prevalent in the current bond are community use, curriculum-driven design, and in this case, STEAMs, science, technology, engineering, art, and mathematics, site repairs and upgrades, and then finally, aging infrastructure. Repairing infrastructure, and specifically the building envelope, protects the schools as an asset. And so it's super important to be reinvesting in our infrastructure. The overall findings of the 2022 5-year capital plan amounted to almost $90 million. Working with district administration and the school board, we've really boiled the essence down to the proposed referendum of $30 million. You'll hear in a little while that the strategy is to use retiring debt and to offer the community a tax neutral bond moving forward. The color coding shows the approximate delineation of the 4 pillars and how they impact not only the 90 million original, but the 30 million that's proposed. We had a number of roundtable discussions with our school principals and others from district administration. There are so many extraordinary qualities that bubble up that are part of preparing our students for the future. I'm not going to read down every item on this list, but these are the sort of the qualities and the principles of education that we're pursuing. We want to have facilities that support the excellence of the faculty and the students. So the elementary school principals met with us and we talked in great detail about the development of the STEAM program in our 3 elementary schools here at the Hendrick Hudson School District. Some of the guiding design principles that emerged from that discussion, flexibility. We want to make sure that items that we include or furniture that we buy is adaptable and reusable over time, and that we're not sort of stuck with a plant that isn't flexible for our future needs. Storage, as we build projects and have materials that we need to store, we want to be able to put those away in a safe place and bring them back out for the next period. STEAM is by its nature all about interdisciplinary learning, so we want to make sure that we're covering all the different elements and aspects of a creative modern education program. We want to bring up together small and medium group groupings, small and large group instruction into these spaces. Integration of technology is critical. Access to media, recharging, plugging in, all those elements, and then making sure that we have universal access. So making these STEAM spaces so that a faculty member can push in with their class and have general access to the space. Super important. So these are images of other STEAM centers and other elementary schools. Really the dynamic, colorful, well-lit, cheerful spaces. You see everything's on the casters, flexible. There's solo spaces where individual students, 1s, 2s, 3s, and 4s can meet. And again, access to technology is one of the overarching elements there. We're always building in a STEAM center. So we have the interdisciplinary learning that happens there. I'd like to tell a quick personal story on the way that STEAM learning touched my own family. Our sons Ian and Connor are seniors in high school, and when they were 8 years old, they went to art camp, and there was a 3D printer at art camp. And then these are 2 of the pieces that they made. And so this process of imagining something, designing it in the computer, and then building it with a 3D printer, it changed how they approach problem solving and technology. And Master Sifu and the Green Giant, the Iron Giant did not pop out perfect the first time. It was this process of success and failure that led them to this critical thinking. So I just wanted to share that this is something very passionate to us as your school district architect, having this technology to support the faculty and the teacher. It changes students and improves how they think about problem solving. We also met with our middle and high school principals, Lauren at the high school and Anthony at the middle school. And some of these items, they've been on the long list, I'll say, that they've been items we've been talking about for quite a while. So at the high school, actually, I'll start on the right at the middle school that we're meeting in this evening, to create an interdisciplinary learning commons at the existing upper commons. And I have a number of slides to talk about that in some detail. So that's reimagining the upper commons, the space where the pool and the foosball table are today. Brighten up the central cafeteria space, lighting, painting, and make it really a cheerful and beautiful space. The bones of the space are terrific, but the dark colors are really making it less attractive than it could be. Continue to improve security. That's something that with Anthony and Marlene that we're working on each semester. And then adding air conditioning to all the general classrooms, special ed classrooms, in the theater. Air conditioning is really no longer nice to have. It's something that really is impactful on the delivery of education services in the spring and in the fall, and that those dollars are set aside to accomplish that piece in this bond. And then upgrade the STEAM instructional studio that's currently at the lower level where the wood shop used to be. Moving over to the high school on the left, we met with Warren. We want to sort of convert the sort of older style library into a modern learning commons. Improve the dome for large group assembly. We had an experiment where we had graduation in the dome last cycle. Worked out great, and there are some improvements that the dome could really make it more multi-purpose and make it function better for large assembly. We have basement level music instruction spaces. Haven't been touched in a few decades. We'd like to rehabilitate those for music instruction. And then some security pieces. And then also we have two studios up underneath the cupola on the third floor and renovate those spaces as well. So I'm going to turn it over to my partner, Ophi Pearson, to talk about the improvements that are proposed for the high school. Just wanted to share with everyone in the community that on the lower left, 8.5 million identifies the total portion of the bond that would be invested at the high school. And then the numbers on the right are the incremental costs for each of the initiatives. Any costs that you see in this presentation are total bond costs. So they include contingencies, escalation, dollars set aside for asbestos abatement. It is the box that we will live in, and there are no additional dollars that come if we're fortunate to receive the community referendum approval.
Good afternoon, everyone. So for the high school, you'll see here we have a summary of the major components of what will be part of the bond. So first and foremost, we have upgrades to everything on the outside, your site work, your walkways, your access ways, your pavements, and your repairs. That takes up a smaller portion of the total bond cost, but nonetheless, it's somewhere that we all traverse and it needs to be maintained and upgraded. Armand mentioned protecting the assets. So the 2.75 million mentioned in terms of exterior building improvements, 3/4 of that cost is your roof. So part of that is we are proposing to replace your existing full roof, which is a fairly large expense. However, it is necessary to keep the building dry and to keep the envelope dry so that we can continue to have school. Other portions of the exterior envelope improvements are maintaining the exterior repointing, the brick. If there's metal doors that need to be refurbished, that's all part of that number. As Armand also mentioned, we have basement level music studios. A couple years ago, we invested in the high school auditorium, and it's only fitting that we also put some investment into your music downstairs to, be able to provide better instrument storage for the kids that are down here, a better formation for the space so that, we can continue to enhance the music program at the high school.
More attractive.
And more attractive. On the third floor, mezzanine areas, the bottom two images show what those rooms look like if you haven't been up there in a while. We are proposing that those spaces be made into more of a collegiate professional development space. Just to keep in mind, this area, which is of course underneath the cupola, has no elevator access. So it cannot be an exclusive space, right? It has to be a multi-purpose room, but we do see where there's definitely opportunity where we can revamp this space so that it can be used to better prepare the students as they go on into college. We have had the library, or I should say you've had the library on your list for quite some time. We've made improvements along the way. There's been new furniture put in, but I think at this point, everyone kind of wants to take the big plunge and to go ahead and rehabilitate the library into making it to a modern learning commons where there's small breakout rooms, individual spaces, technology incorporated into the library. More where, again, we can continue to prepare the students for what college really feels like, so that they'll be better prepared. The dome, your experiments with last year graduation, I believe went well. However, here's a few things that we think would need to be improved upon in order for you to continue to use the space for large assemblies and large functions, we would definitely need to upgrade your technology within the space. So your audio, your media technologies, and in order to also improve the audio, we have to improve the acoustical improvements of the dome. Definitely needed. And on top of that, that also comes with furniture for the space and appropriate storage for said furniture. So that's pretty much in a nutshell of how we plan to make modifications to the dome so it can be used for large community assembly and activity uses. Turn it back over to Armand.
So back at the Blue Mountain Middle School, where we're meeting this evening, there are dollars set aside for site work improvements, reinvestment in the west athletic field. It's really a natural turf for surfacing and drainage improvements. I'll remind the board that the septic galleries are underneath there, so we can't put too much new dirt or layers on top. We'd also like to address the organization of the field, so make it clear in terms of wayfinding where parents and so on access the field, where there's going to be opportunities to sit and that sort of thing. Pavement improvements, sidewalks, the typical list that you see there. Similar to the high school, there are dollars set aside to recoat the entire roof of the middle school. There's a new system that's a liquid applied system, has no smells, and we get our 20-year warranty at a fraction of the cost of a total ripoff, or tear down and removal rather. We call it a RIP in the business. So again, protecting the building from water penetration is just super critical. That's how we protect the building as an asset, and we make the other investments under the roof moving forward. We have a number of original toilet rooms here in the middle school. Even though the maintenance team is totally on top of keeping them clean, if you imagine 60-year-old grout and tile work, it's super hard to stay on top of it and to keep it clean and antiseptic. In certain circumstances, there are ADA improvements that need to be addressed, privacy issues. So to gut rehab these spaces, including ventilation, is very high on the list. Also, interior door replacement. Our doors are not only for privacy or privacy between classrooms, but also they're part of the safety and security of the school. When the doors are closed, they create smoke compartments to keep the smoke out of the corridor and make safe passage for the students in the event of an emergency. The middle school gymnasium is also original. The bleachers are original and are hand operated in terms of being pulled out. They're beyond their serviceable life. The replacement bleachers would be motorized. There are guiding lights to make sure that if like a garage door, if it's coming open and anyone's in the way, it'll be prohibited from opening fully. So safety is super important here, and then having modern bleachers that address the needs at the middle school are on the list. In addition, $2.75 million is set aside to address the original servery from the kitchen. So the servery sits between the kitchen and the cafeteria. Right now, there are 3 separate compartments, just tough in terms of staffing. The point of sale is separate and outside the space. So this will address and modernize those needs to bring them forward into the current century. I talked a little bit about, 3D printing and STEAM learning, and we have a great studio space downstairs at the high school. It's in the location of the original wood shop. So a little under $500,000 is set aside to make improvements for that delivery of education services from that space. So I'd like to focus for a minute on what we refer to as the big idea for the middle school. And you see that the red dashed line on the center right of the plan is proposed to be reclaimed and reimagined as an interactive, interdisciplinary student engagement center. So this space would replace the current library that we're meeting in this evening. And it will join with the other core common areas of the middle school, including the cafeteria and the theater and music instruction spaces. So collecting and gathering all these spaces together just feels right. It also, when this space was designed, over 20 years ago, it was still very much of an old school library. This will be a more dynamic, exciting and interactive space for the middle school. Next slide. In the center shows a pictogram or a diagram of what the floor plan could look like. The idea is that we've introduced a maze for the collection of books. The books would be in low scale shelving units on casters, and there would be nooks and crannies where the students could make their way through the maze and find opportunities to sit down, have access to media. The space at the bottom of the plan would be where the 212 and 213 classrooms are today. We would remove those walls and make a large open space with wooden tiered seating under the windows. Getting natural daylight into the heart of the school is part of the mission here. Having team meeting spaces is also on the list. So a couple of perspective images. This is with the cafeteria at your back. You'd see into the new learning commons. And again, so this is the current space where the pool table and the foosball is located in the upper commons. These spaces become oversubscribed overnight. It's going to be the space that students want to be, to see and be seen. It'll really change how the culture and improve the usability of the center of the middle school. I'm sorry, Magdalen Middle School, yes. So this is looking back to that main meeting space they talked about. And again, by removing the walls that are currently surrounding the classrooms, we'll get a lot of natural daylight into the heart of the space. So moving now to Frank G. This is where our 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade will be relocated from Furnace Woods. The total bond allocation for Frank G is $2.5 million, about $250,000 for site pavements, walkways, and access ways, $500,000 for building envelope needs, common and individual toilet rooms, $750,000, $500,000 to address the cafeteria serving line upgrades. Again, similar to the middle school here, the servery is original to the school and requires upgrade. And then in all of our 3 elementary schools to renovate the STEM structural and instructional studios is included in the bond cost allocation. So the bottom image is the existing cafeteria at Frank G. We actually did a very similar project for the CET Elementary School in Croton Harmon, and that's the image on the upper piece. And the idea is to bring the servery proper out into the space. So keep the kitchen sort of back behind the wall, and then have a much more friendly, exciting looking servery that engages with the students and brings the food literally out into the cafeteria. And then this is a picture of the current STEAM Center. And again, this is a K2 at Frank G today. And when we convert this over to 3.5, it'll have a different look and feel.
All right, so total bond cost for Furnace Woods is $2.5 million. So similar to Frank G, we're starting off with site improvements around the building, making sure our sidewalks are safe and any upgrades necessary and repairs are made. Similarly to maintaining the assets and doing masonry improvements and brick repointing as is required for keeping the exterior envelope nice and tight. Similar to a lot of our schools, our existing toilet rooms are original to the building. So here at Furnace Woods, there is bond dollars allocated to renovate those existing toilet rooms. As Armand mentioned before, as part of the elementary schools, we are adding STEM and instructional studios to all the elementary schools. One thing here for Furnace Woods is we do have about $250,000 assigned to renovating the cafetorium, similar to what we did at BV that we just finished last summer. I would like to point out that it'd be similar, but not as extensive. So at BV, the tiers, you come in at the top of the tiers. So ADA was definitely an issue at Buchanan Verplank. At Furnace Woods, you come in at the bottom of the tier. So ADA accessibility and egress is not problematic. So For that space, we propose to leave the tiered steps in place, and the cost includes adding AC to the space, which also means you have to, renovate your ceiling. Probably some painting in the space. The terrazzo floor is pretty good. So the upgrades to the cafetorium would be minimal, but it will still be impactful. And these are existing images of the cafetorium as it stands now. And the next slide will show just an image of BV that we completed last year and how we were able to transform the space. At Buchanan Verplank, this school has a reduced bond allocation cost compared to Francis Woods and Frank G, simply because we've recently done work there, which I mentioned is the cafeteria. So we have the bond cost there is $1.5 million. Again, the pillars are pretty much the same between the elementary schools. There are site improvements for $250,000. We are doing envelope repairs for another quarter. Again, recurring theme, existing toilet rooms are original. We want to definitely make some upgrades there and adding that STEAM and instructional studio.
So this is our bond cost summary slide on the left. You see 8.5 million set aside for the high school. Clearly, reinvestment here at the middle school is the largest and most impactful of the investments proposed at half the bond cost, $15 million. 2.5 for each Furnace Woods and Frank G, and then 1.5 for Buchanan Verplank, as we just mentioned. Some of the metrics that comprise the development of the bond cost are on the right. As we said, the request to the community is for $30 million. The annual payment, $2.2 million, present value, $30 million. And then, we've worked out the interest, the state aid. And the idea is that the size of the bond has been configured so that the retiring debt pays that $2.2 million annually. And the idea is to have a tax neutral bond for the community. Coming now to I think the last slide before we say thank you. So it's super important that we chart next steps and make sure that we have a legally compliant bond moving forward. The first line at the top, we just want to remind that this bond has been built with your educators and with the design team. So we're really proud of the fact that every scope item, it falls into one or more of the 4 pillars that I discussed at the beginning of the presentation. We have many public meetings, including the one that we're having tonight. It's essentially a single purpose meeting to talk about the bond. At the end of March, on the 27th, we'll have our meeting where the board will be requested to adopt the seeker and the bond resolution. That'll start a waiting period and then have us in legal compliance for a bond vote alongside your budget vote. So it'll be a separate proposition later in May of this year. We meet with our facilities committee every month, if not once, then twice. That's been the clearinghouse for a lot of the work that we've done and that we presented this evening. The seeker planning, State Environmental Quality Review Act. We have a special outside consultant that's been helping us with that. We've drafted the environmental assessment form, and that resolution is being drafted as we speak. We're always refining the scope and cost. We're excited to hear from the board and the superintendent any additional content or questions, and that'll help refine our scope as we move forward after this evening. And then we have the campaign, so we'll continue to have informational meetings with community members and outside groups.
Thank you, Armando. Greg, would you mind going back to slide 5? It's titled Preparing Students for the Future. And Armand, while Greg's doing that, could you just remind the public, this has been in development for about 2 years. Could you remind the public and the board and the public the overall scope that was identified in a building condition survey of what could be done and what it's been refined to for now?
Yeah, so we are actually, in February, it was 2 full years since we were retained to work on the school district's 5-year capital plan. And the 5-year capital plan is a top to bottom roof to the basement boiler, review of all building systems and needs. Another component is curriculum driven needs. And then the other components that I talked about. So we identified $89 million of actually of priority one needs. And then through the work over the 2 years with the facilities committee and others, we drove that down to the essence of the 30 million that's being proposed this evening.
Great, thank you. Thank you for that as a reminder. And for the board, you may have noticed that the renderings and the potential upgrades that you see in terms of the classroom designs may not look like the school that you went to. And there may be questions why. Well, is that just bells and whistles? I want to come back to this slide because, excuse me, form follows function. I'm not an architect, but I remember what Mr. Muty, my 6th grade shop teacher, said, that form follows function, and whatever I designed was not very functional. So I learned from that. And the function is coming from here. These are the concepts and the skills that we want our students to develop, whether they go into the workforce or whether they go into higher education. And I think if you take a look at some of the office spaces that our students may be working in, and those higher educational facilities that they'll be working in, that they'll be learning in, they're designed in a way to help students collaborate, problem solve. There's technology infused into everything we do in terms of learning and employment now. So being able to prepare our students in an environment before they leave the hallowed halls of Hendrick Hudson High School is doing a service to them to be prepared to live out those skills and learn how to function in that environment. There's a reason our schools look very industrial. In fact, we still measure the units of time that our students are required to have in school by the Carnegie credits. And Carnegie, if you know your history, was a proponent of the factory system. And our schools tend to model factories. And that's very difficult to produce. We're not producing widgets, we're producing learners and students and lifelong learners. So that's why you see a number of our surrounding neighborhoods, our neighbors, school districts, office spaces that you yourself may even work in look different than what you learned in. So I'll piggyback onto Armand's son's 3D printing as an example of how problem solving can be supported by the space to hold the technology, the trained educator to deliver the curriculum, and the tools such as a 3D printer. In a previous district of mine in approximately 2011, we implemented spaces such as this, and we had 3D printers, CNC laser cutter machines in the buildings. And after students were used to learning in that space and learned how to learn in that space and learn the skills, there was a student who required an assistive device to walk. And that student's device broke during the class. And those students were able to back engineer it and print out a piece that served as a option to fill in to support the student, and they didn't have to replace that. So that's the type of real world transferable skills that we're looking to support in the combination of the space, instruction, and the tools that are there. So I just wanted to thank you for your thoughtful approach to this and your thoughtful presentation. And Armand, are you ready for questions from the board at this point in time?
Absolutely.
Okay.
I just wanted to piggyback off what you said about neighboring schools. I know there are neighboring schools that have already put forth bonds that have been approved that are doing a lot of what is being presented here. And even in the presentation, you included pictures from neighboring districts. So this is something to kind of, for those pieces to bring us up to speed to where our neighboring districts are so that we can remain equally as competitive as those districts.
Let me just go to slide 9. I just want to reassure everyone that it wasn't just the principals and administration, that the teachers were involved in what the designs look like and what the STEAM's rooms are going to look like.
If I may, once the bond passes, we'll be authorized to actually work with the on-site teams, and that will include multiple faculty members to design the details that then we'll present back to the board. So this is really the starting point to have enough for budgeting purposes and visual. But our hallmark is to listen and to engage with stakeholders in a thoughtful way.
I also, something that came up, this week in a PTA meeting, I think was a misunderstanding, for the middle school. When we say that we were relocating the space, I think originally some people may have thought we were eliminating the library completely. So I don't know if we want to go back to downstairs. It was just something that came up that it was multiple people were saying they thought we were eliminating the library. So I think we just need to make sure that we are very clear. This is not being eliminated, it's being relocated, and then this space can be used for something else other than the library, so that we're getting more traffic and that it's actually being used.
I don't think you can have a middle school without a library.
Oh, no, I think there was something with wording. I agree. But I think there was some wording somewhere that led people to believe the library was being eliminated. So I just wanted to confirm once more that it's being relocated.
Yeah.
I think it's we call it commons, so maybe people weren't
Yeah.
registering it as library.
Yeah, I think it was, yeah.
I think that's
something.
maybe
Because
what
it was called common.
because it's called.
That's what I'm saying. There was something that was missing and there was that misconception. So I just wanted to make sure.
Yeah,
We were
you can't
confirming.
have a school without a library. You cannot have a school without a library. I just wanna,
If I may, just share that, you know, when I was growing up, libraries are shh,
Yeah.
go in there, take a look and don't talk. And we still have places with books and we still want to read, but it's an interactive commons where students are invited to be collaborative together. And we're definitely not eliminating the library, we're enhancing it and relocating.
I think that's the reason. In the original build, the library was there, right? It was the heart of the school. Now I imagine as a student, granted, when I was a student here, it wasn't here, it was in the middle. If you're a sixth grader, right, you have to come all the way up to the third floor to the eighth grade wing, right? How often are you visiting? So I love the idea of bringing it back to the central heart of the school.
I guess for the dome why was that? I guess why was that included as like a priority one? Was there anything else we could have done besides the dome for $950,000 that could have went a long way?
No, I think the aha moment is that the dome is a community asset. These are my own words. And we sort of discovered when we had graduation there that we have this terrific asset, but with a little bit of improvement, we could get even more use out of it. And I might ask, the superintendent just to sort of pile on there, but that's where I believe in our facilities committee that sort of bubbled up as a priority to bring to the referendum.
So, being able to have that dome as a flexible space, I think I was not here for last year's graduation and moving up, but I heard that there was quite a bit of talk about how to use that space and that the space would be appropriate and that it was a bit more people than we actually thought. But I believe it took pretty labor intensive actions on a number of our staff's part to make it happen.
I did.
And I believe, Armand's thinking here and the thought process of the group that has presented the bond scope is that if with a few little tweaks, we can make it easier to provide those opportunities.
That's exactly right.
And when we met at facilities, you said you were gonna look at if we can do any, even if that scope ends up being less than the 950, we were try to maybe reface or clean up the exterior, right? Like that was also something that we were gonna keep on the table to
Yes.
try to fit in something.
So in the construction world, add alternates or additional instructions to the contractor that they bid on separately. And so painting, for example, the exterior of the dome could come from the bucket of exterior envelope that Opie talked about. And we'll have, when we open all the bids, hopefully we're in an environment where escalation has gone back down, and inflation also. But if there's an opportunity to fit that in, it's definitely included in the seeker, and it's something that we'll bring to the school board for direction.
I think we also were looking at community spaces. I mean, schools are the heart of the community. So I think the dome and our fields are community spaces as well.
So my question was, how would we invite the community in was one of my questions. And then how does this benefit the kids that are using the building every day? And I know that we do testing in there. I think we had in the past. How does that help us during the day in that space?
So when you say bring the community in, are you talking about for input in terms of what we could?
Yeah, like what is their thought if it's a community space? What are the ideas around bringing the community in?
No,
So-
not asking them their how, not asking.
How they can use it, how they can use it.
How would we, like,
use it.
so I think of the last bond, one of the selling points of the bond was we spent money on the facilities in general, right? And we did these security updates, but there was a new field, there was a new track, and part of the encouragement from the community was access to utilize this and enjoy this as an asset. If you go by there on the weekends, you see kids playing soccer on the field, people walking the track, the lights are on in the evenings now. So I think the opportunity that Eric is asking about and what I'm curious for the answer to, but what I liked about the dome piece was it's another opportunity for us to allow non-student access to an asset that everyone's paying for, regardless of what building your kids attend, or if you even have kids that are still in school.
But if
So
Amelia had some.
One of the things that we talked about the dome use for, community members, if it's cold outside, they can walk the track, correct?
Yeah.
But if it's cold outside, we said maybe we could open up, they could walk their laps inside the dome. There you go, for, something there.
Dances.
PTA events, like if we wanna have, or the other events, we
Huge
said like
school
the
dances.
penny sales, or whatever, the bag sales,
They
like you
used
said,
to
we could
have-
do like those kind of events there. Now that we have two K-1-2 schools, we don't have to do two separate events for everything that we do.
Sure.
Bring everyone together there, do your shows there, your dancers there.
Yeah.
You know, winter concerts there, start looking at ways that even though we're gonna be on two sides of the district, how can we meet in the middle?
The fairs and carnivals.
Yeah.
Yeah, fair would
Great
be
idea.
Yeah, like I said,
one
you know, we-
unified fair.
when we do Halloween
Trunk or treat.
trunk or
Trunk or
treat,
treat.
Yeah.
maybe put it there, and
If it's
maybe
raining,
just do like,
I don't.
even if we just move away from doing a trunk, just do tables or something, like just do
That's a great idea.
community events that
So
bring
when-
everyone together, centrally in the community.
So this is definitely a function of proper procedure. In terms of how we allow community to access it, we want to make sure that they do have that access, but we want to make sure it's within our facilities use policy. So I think touting our facilities use policy and explaining how the public can apply for that and use that process is key if we're going to say we're going to open that up. So that's probably the best way we can invite community input, because many people may not know that there's a process for that review, and it's in place for the balance between safety, security, to protect the operations of the school, but also to be that heart of the community as well. For instance, we have the regional Special Olympics in that site in our high school, and the dome is used for part of that. And they go through the process of.
And I would say the dome is also used with the town of Cortland. I mean, my son took a basketball camp. I mean, they have camps there,
Yeah.
obviously,
Or they just did baseball this weekend.
and then they did the sports. Remember when they did the sports thing at the dome? I think Mrs. Boyle did it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that was a huge success. All the schools coming.
I just wonder if we're spending a lot of money to fix it. Do we have to do that to do what you're envisioning?
Right, I'm wondering whether.
That's what are we gaining from that space? Like, I see we need technology and media, but I also, like, I'm thinking of the kids that are using the building right now, that are actually, that will be future using the building, how that affects them. And what does upgrading it, what's the difference of upgrading it? Because maybe we've been underutilizing that space for many years. But is spending this money going to make that, is gonna help that we've been underutilizing the space,
So
potentially?
just a few enhancements that we articulated in our facilities committee, and Anthony and Armand and Opie, let me know if I misspeak, but the vulcanized, for lack of a better term, is it a vulcanized rubber floor or? Rubberized. It's a rubberized floor that needs a lot of care if you're going to be moving furniture onto it. So making sure you upgrade enhancements to support that, so that it can be used for multi-purpose is also part of this consideration. So it's preparing the dome for the use by many multi-purpose functions.
We used it we've used it for pre-prom for years. Hundreds of people go through there when we have pre-prom. And we've done it without any of this work. You see what I'm saying? Am I?
Yeah.
Right, but there's, to continue to do that, it's to
Right,
prep
so
the
it's-
space for it, because it's also a lot of work to facilitate those events. Right, moving into furniture, moving
I know the
into.
PTA does it all, to be honest, and with some of the custodians.
Well, I know they said, audio was an issue.
Audio was an issue. I'm gonna be honest, my son graduated last year. I do not recommend we do that as a backup plan even necessarily, unless it's a must. Because the acoustics are not good. I guess we could adjust for that, but now we're adjusting for that with the intention of maybe having a backup graduation in there. You see what I'm saying?
Well,
But I think the idea was to be able to use it for other things besides just I think it was like to have a center, so we could have other shows or for elementary school.
Yeah.
Not just for graduation. So it was creating some acoustical, some area for a stage, some area for audio visual, so it wouldn't be just for graduation, but the intent would be for other uses as well.
Like, there's been complaints that we don't have space in certain schools for large gatherings. But we have a space, it's just not at that school. We can use the space for that stuff.
We also have the gym at the high school, it's very big too.
But that's a scheduling, when you're going to schedule events there, since that's the big place. I mean, if you have the fashion show there, and I wanna have something there, we're competing.
We can keep, I don't think you could do two of those events at the same time in that building. In that high school, it would be too many people at one time. Like when you have the fashion show, you have hundreds and hundreds of people, then you're putting another event on at the same time. I don't know, I would.
Maybe it's not that, maybe it's a practice.
Yeah, well, that's different.
Well,
But
I guess, so,
like the homecoming dance, we had 390 kids come. We used the gym. The dome we didn't touch. See what I'm saying?
well, I think this is why we talked about facilities, maybe ending up reducing the 950 and doing something on the exterior. So, because I think the facade needs some updates and some
I agree.
cleaning up. So I think that's something we talked about. So let us go back to the table. I think we put that there as a budget, right? And I think originally we wanted to do more, but I think we did tear it down, like break it down a little bit. And we said, let's try to clean up the outside because it is kind of mossy. There's some site cleanup that we can do that would clean up that space for visually.
And
So
do we use that space for testing?
The dome?
I was told yes.
You did, right?
Yeah.
So just as a reminder to the board, this is the accumulation of 2 years of thinking in pre-bond work to get us to a point where we feel comfortable perhaps with the buckets of spending and some concepts. And then if the bond is approved, we can certainly continue to refine specifics within there.
Yeah, I mean, things we can't change would be what would be part of the seeker. So it's fields, right? And most of it is like, we can't really do much. We can't really be adding square footage. We're doing a lot of outside field work unless we've already called it out.
The seeker,
Most of this is refurbishing, sorry.
excuse me, the seeker has been configured to be broader than the actual scope of the work so that we have choices, the board has choices on how to move forward. But we can't put a building addition or add another synthetic turf field.
Right.
But if we decide to not do the audio upgrades in the dome and invest the money on the outside, that's perfectly fine and within the scope of the bond.
I'm not being silly at all, but I know there's people at home that are watching and wanna know. When might the opportunity come for the school to add another piece of turf? Do we have any thoughts on retiring debt that I understand that didn't fit into this one, but I see the joy that our turf field brought to the community, and I think that having more space, like last fall, every single soccer game I heard, I don't know, was canceled.
Yeah.
We need space for athletics, we need space for families to come and kick a ball and be outdoors. Do we have a vision as to when, I know there was some talk maybe by district office, maybe turf there, the girls softball field area, like, do we have a vision ahead of this? I know I'm gonna accept that it can't fit here.
Yeah.
But is there any?
I think that was like, what, 3 million?
Yes, so the 5-year capital plan contemplated a multi-sport practice field to the west of Frank G. Lindsay, and behind the district office. So that project would require, specific additional, planning and testing. We would do perk tests to figure out how the stormwater would work. We would develop a detailed budget. It would have its own seeker and then typically would come back as a referendum, and it could be part of an annual budget. But whenever the board is ready to move forward, we could complete the planning, the budgeting, and then it could be its own referendum or it could be included in the annual budget.
we have any other retiring debt coming?
We have yes, we have $1 million in 2 years.
So that would probably more than, so I guess it's something that we could look at and.
If I can just mention, so moving the 3-5 to Frank G, it bookends, our oldest students will all be in this bigger campus
Yeah.
with the 2 fields. I mean, that feels
Yeah.
great.
No, I think if you all agree with it, love it. Just didn't fit.
The 89 million included that.
Yeah, it wasn't 89 million. It included a lot of good things.
Other questions? Oh. This is not a question so much for Armand, but in our conversations around carpet replacing, right? And we were talking, is it in the budget, is it in the bond, is it the budget, is it the bond? What, do we have any idea where we're landing on that? Can that be something that if it comes out of the budget, it goes into the bond?
So that, we had added $200,000 to refurb carpets at BB. Is that something that we could likely find space for, in the bond?
That's another example of an ad alternate.
Right.
That, so what I would recommend is that we first complete the priority 1 pieces. And then, and we're contemplating a 2-phase project. So we'll open the bids for phase 1 and with some surgical exactitude, we'll know what we have left for phase 2. And then maybe there's room for these other projects, but we can definitely, make a really good attempt at it.
Yeah.
Yes.
And then I guess I'm gonna ask a question piggybacking off that, only because we had this conversation. We do have carpeting at the high school on the 2nd floor of Frank G. That's one of the STEAM areas that we're upgrading. Is that part of this?
The STEAM area is, so would the STEAM area would probably move from carpet to something else, correct?
And then the remaining classrooms at Frank G would stay carpeting for now. On the 2nd floor. And then the high school carpet, we're still.
It's not part of this.
Well, the dollars allocated will have new flooring in the STEAM spaces at the 3 elementary schools, so we can decide together what the right implementation is. Sometimes carpeting, stays in the annual budget because of the amortization of its lifespan. So carpeting doesn't last 20 years in a public school, but we can do it.
I don't think we wanted to do carpet. We wanted to remove carpet and put,
We wanted to replace the carpet.
vinyl
Oh,
tile.
with LVT,
Yeah.
perfect. Okay, got it.
My question is, if we put the $200,000 in the bond, it's not gonna be done for 2 years. And from what I'm hearing, right, we wouldn't, if we don't have any money left over, then the carpet doesn't get done, right?
That's 1
None of
year.
this gets
The
done.
work would start next summer.
Yeah, so that was gonna be my question for you, for the community, so those that are at home. We talked about the timeline for the vote. Can you talk a little bit about the timeline for when work starts and when the work will be completed? Just for the
Yes.
community at home.
So we contemplate breaking the work into roughly 2 $15 million projects. And the purpose for doing that is to make sure we hit the sweet spot in terms of the bidding environment. One $30 million project excludes a lot of the local and medium-sized shops. So the idea is a year to draw and get the permit. So we're now in sort of the middle of 25 for phase 1, and then starting construction, at least 18 months of construction. So that for phase 1, that brings us to the middle of 26. We're delivering, right? And then phase 2 would follow in the same pattern, about a year later.
Really 3 years out.
Yes, for phase 2, yes. No, and you're right to point that out. I mean, that's the reality. I'll share that, the state education department's review for building permits is becoming more and more protracted. It was 4 months for a long time, and then it became 5, and now it's a full 6 months. There's an industry issue, this summer that a lot of projects are on hold because districts didn't receive their permits in a timely manner. So we're drawing and submitting even earlier for the following summer. So for projects in the summer of 25, we're going to be submitting for our permit at the end of this summer.
Thank you.
Any other questions? I just wanted to say thank you, because I started this process last year on the facilities committee and handed the baton over to Amelia. And I think you guys have done an awesome job because I know where this started. And to see where it is, I think you really have done a great job identifying some of the most important things. I just wanted to thank you guys for doing that work with Enrique and Anthony and Armand, and yeah, thank you.
We second that motion.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you both for being here, for all your work.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys. Thank you.
Anthony, feel free to, unless you want to stick around for the policy, my superintendent report, feel free to have a good evening yourself. Also, this has been a very long week for the cabinet. Feel free to get home early before my morning superintendent report. So thank you, cabinet, for all your work.
Thank you.
Amelia's leaving too.
I don't know. Been it?
Now. Next meeting. No, because we didn't that
Thanks, everyone.
You have both your, signed.
Thank you so much.
I don't have any questions. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right.
You'll still be right.
We can move on to our superintendent's report.
Sure, thank you. Just two quick items. I know it's been a long week for everyone on the board. I hope the public does see the amount of time and effort you're putting into governance and district function. So thank you for that. So I will keep mine very brief. I returned from the annual Winter Institute for NISCUS, which is the New York State Council of School Superintendents. And the reason why I wanted to touch base on this is because I want to model lifelong learning and a focus on professional learning. So this conference, and I appreciate the board giving me the opportunity to be away from the district and also the opportunity to attend. So this conference focused on excellence for all students. It had a number of professional learning sessions sponsored by colleagues from around the state, focused on supporting students through MTSS, focused on the Blue Ribbon graduation measures, also focus on the role of the superintendent in changing times and how to partner with board, governance entities, and also parents. So I appreciate the opportunity to attend those and continue to recharge my batteries through professional learning. And I hope to bring it back and make it a value add to the district. This going forward, should the board allow me to attend in years future, this Spring Institute or Winston Institute also has a component of advocacy. So I came on in October. Normally you have to schedule these meetings early in the year, but there is a component where you can touch base on lobby day where you can advocate with local legislatures. That's being done by our district in general terms, but also this was another opportunity to do that, which I hope to take advantage of in years going forward. The only other thing that I would like to remind the public about, we have 3 opportunities other than board meetings and work sessions for the community to get to know, a little bit more about the budget or about the proposed capital bond. We have our first meet and greet with the community at this Saturday. This Saturday at the Hendrick Hudson Free Library Coffee Bar from 9 to 11 a.m. That's March 9th. And you can sign up for any of these, and the public can sign up for any of these through the postcard that was sent home or any of my weekly updates that I know are read with great attention to detail there. So that link is in that item. The next meet and greet after that will be March 13th at the high school AP conference room from 5 to 6. So that's before the board meeting. And then there will be a work session to follow right after that meet and greet. And in a similar manner, the final meet and greet will be on the 27th of March from 5 to 6 p.m. before the board meeting at that time. And at that board meeting, we anticipate adopting all the propositions that would go on the May 21st budget vote. So this would include the budget proposition. This would include a proposed capital bond project. This would include a proposed bus maintenance expenditure. It would also include our yearly board election and then the possibility of the energy tax stabilization reserve creation. So that's all for the superintendent report. No follow-up items other than we are working on the questions brought up at the line by line, which we hope to update the board in the weekly update, as well as if there's any public component of that, to update it on the public website of the budget. You're welcome. Thank you.
All right, our next session is the policy readings. These are all first readings. Since we're in the work session, we are not going to vote on any policies without time for public comment. The first policy is 0300, accountability.
I'm gonna read the NISBA, as I said, did last time, I'm gonna read the NISBA recommendation, that comes with this as a note, so everyone is aware. Note, effective school boards engage in continuous assessment of all conditions affecting education and have a number of policies in place to ensure that such assessment occurs. See, for example, the policies listed in the cross-reference section below. Taken together, these policies form a comprehensive accountability system designed to improve the effectiveness of schools and help keep a district's primary focus on student achievement. To complete this comprehensive accountability system, the board may wish to consider adopting a separate policy dealing specifically with accountability. The adoption and regular review of such a policy helps to reinforce the board's obligation to the community to monitor and evaluate the district's progress toward reaching the goals set by the board. We have provided this policy for the board's consideration. And here's where the policy begins.
I'll make a motion to read the reading.
Want me to start reading it first?
Sure, if you'd like.
The Board of Education acknowledges that it is directly accountable to the community it has been elected to serve and is committed to engaging in a continuous assessment of all district conditions affecting education. The board recognizes that a comprehensive accountability system is necessary to improve.
To waive.
Second.
I just want to make sure that.
Okay.
Yeah, we were best.
You're gonna let her read the whole thing? Rule and intent.
We can start sharing this responsibility.
No, I like how you do it.
Okay, so this is this is a local policy. It's not required. It is highly recommended. And it is a new policy. We do not have this policy right now.
Do you want to read this one?
Do we have any policy like this?
No, not, well, yes, some similar. That's a whole nother conversation that will come because the policy committee is working on policies we currently have that that NISBA is recommending that we retire, and they're similar to this.
Okay.
But we have to have a meeting to discuss those policies before we move to retire them, but this, we don't have anything quite like this.
It's it's not very black and white, right? There's a lot of overlap, and as we open up one door, you realize there's two more you can close, but then you need to open one more to cover one piece of one that needs to be included.
Okay. Any questions? Okay, the next policy is the first reading of revised policy 0310, evaluation of school board operational procedures.
Okay, this is another local policy. So I'm going to read the recommendation. I think it's important. Because I believe we haven't revised. Carmen, have we revised this policy?
It should have.
It doesn't say.
Because the balloon.
Okay.
We have this currently, we're revising it.
Okay.
There's one, if you scroll down to the bottom of the first page, there's a bold update to it.
Yes, it's one update. So this is the board's current policy primarily as is. We have included the optional bold text below for the board's consideration. Please review it to reflect the board's current practices and philosophy. So I am going to just read. I mean, it just says the board will use a specified type of evaluation instrument, self-evaluation or evaluation instrument. This is very,
Specific type.
no, it's a typo.
Yeah.
We have to change that.
I think it's supposed to read the board will specify.
Yes, the
The
board
type.
will specify
Or
the
use
type
a
of evaluation instrument for self-evaluation. We're gonna have to reword this,
Yeah.
Carmen. Are you taking a note right now? Okay.
We do a self-evaluation.
We do a self-evaluation, but we don't have.
Well, we do, but it has to be named in the policy.
It's recommending that we name it in the policy.
I think you can stay with specific type because you might change that program throughout the years.
I think,
Yeah,
so
it's done it.
It's a specific.
but I think we just need to change specify to specific.
Yes,
Yeah, that's what I think.
yeah.
And do we add something after instrument?
I don't think we need to.
No, the first instrument, something,
Yeah, what
that
happens?
still reads very awkward to me.
The board
Yeah.
will use a specific type of evaluation instrument for self-evaluation period.
Purposes.
Yeah.
So strike instrument.
And
Okay,
add,
go on.
I'm gonna
I
read,
like your wording of purposes. Self-evaluation purposes.
I'm fine with that. And I like adding 4 in there and changing specify to specific.
I think this is right.
I'm gonna read this and you're gonna have a way of reading, okay?
Okay, I'm ready.
Someone, the Board of Education will review the effectiveness of its internal operations. at
Make a
least-
motion to waive the reading.
I'll
Second,
second.
all in favor?
So we're keeping the wording exactly the same, except for the one sentence that Ms. was recommending with our edits on this one, and then we'll bring it back for another
Okay.
one.
And this is the first reading of the revision to policy 0320, evaluation of the superintendent.
This is a very short one, so I'm gonna read it. Let me read this one all the way through. It's like 3 paragraphs. Okay, this is a note from NISBA. We have provided the policy to update the board's current policy. We have updated this policy to reflect the requirements of the commissioner's regulations in the final paragraph. See additional text below. The Board of Education recognizes that student growth, district progress, and community satisfaction are all affected by the performance of the superintendent of schools. The superintendent can function effectively without periodic feedback about his or her performance. Cannot. Therefore, the board recognizes its responsibilities to evaluate the superintendent. During each year of the superintendent's appointment, the board and the superintendent will meet to discuss the criteria of the performance review for that school year. The final plan adopted will be at the sole discretion of the board. Such evaluation will occur at least annually pursuant to the regulations of the Commissioner of Education and will be discussed only during an executive session. The evaluation process is intended to provide the highest quality leadership for the school system. The procedures the board uses for evaluating the superintendent will be filed in the district office and available for review by any individual no later than September 10th of each year.
So we need some commas in the first sentence.
There's definitely some run-on sentences.
The Board of Education recognizes that student growth, district
Comma.
progress, right?
District progress, comma.
Ooh, Oxford comma, I like it.
Does
They're not
that
connected.
sentence imply that anyone from the community?
Yes,
Yeah.
I really like that.
but it's law.
This is the
So
one.
it's public, yeah, it's public knowledge what the ratings are, not the individual components that make up those ratings. That's public knowledge.
This
So
is
they
the-
just see
this
the-
is-
So they
They'll
just
just
see
see-
the overall.
They'll see the
rating.
overall rating.
This is the commissioner's regulation that we haven't been following. We should be.
We've been following what?
The commissioner's regulation.
What do you mean?
We're adding this sentence because it is a commissioner's regulation.
Yeah, I know, but
We
we've
might have
doing
been following the
this. You just said we-
procedure.
we have-
No, by the
Yeah, no.
September 10th part.
I think we might have been following the procedure, and I don't know, because I haven't been here for
We've been
that part
following
of it.
evaluation.
We haven't put it written in the
Yes,
policy.
yes.
That
Right.
part we were,
Yes,
that part we were negligent on.
okay.
Maybe not the date, I'm not sure even, yeah, I get what you were saying, yeah, you may have been doing this, but we weren't stating it in a policy that we were doing this.
Okay. Yes, ma'am. I was saying,
So
we did this.
if we did this, then I can go back and look at just from the public, look at the previous superintendent's rating.
You can, in the past, people have foiled that information, right? Other districts have it, I'm just gonna say, I'm gonna put it out there on their, at the informal rating on the website for public knowledge. We don't do that currently, maybe we wanna do that, that's a little discussion to have.
Who does that?
I don't know, I just
It's
just
their-
as
their
a,
overall
just for
rating.
me as a teacher, I'm thinking, I guess that it's law, but it just
Question
feels
that-
really.
The question that I would have is, how long does it stay on there? Is that a forever thing?
I think they do year, you have, it just.
Every year you
Every
replace the
year.
one that was there?
Oh, you keep previous ones too.
I never knew this was a thing. You learned
Who
something.
does that? Can you tell
I
us?
would be the one, Croton, I think, did it. I was searching other websites to see how, I did see that Croton did it.
Oh, so if I look on Croton, I can, okay. I want to just see what that looks like.
That's it. Any questions? Right. Okay, anybody want to do committee reports? Anyone have anything? I know we just had a meeting last week and we'll have another one next week, so.
Policy committee did a bunch of new policies.
Oh, did you?
Yeah. That's a pretty good update.
Wonderful.
Facilities you saw.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Everyone
and
saw.
we're in budget season, so you see finance.
Erica, you've done a lot of heavy lifting on policy. Thank you.
And Carmen.
Does a lot of heavy lifting
Yeah.
every day.
I just want to just say that today we had our, and it actually surprised me on my calendar. When I opened my calendar this morning, it said, oh, today's the first SEL task force meeting. So I'm a member of it. I joined the meeting. I was actually pleasantly surprised. It's a very large group. There was about 25 people online and they ran the gamut of staff, parents, administration, K through 12 in the district. I've been on a lot of committees at this point. This was one of, I thought was really well representative of our community, and the voices that we heard. I shared notes out with the group. We're going to meet in public, as a unit. And I think that it would be, and I want to discuss this here. I think it shouldn't just be one of us. I think more than one of us should probably be present. I just don't have dates to share yet. So when I have those dates, I will share them out. And then this is a task force. So there is an end, there is a goal and an end. So the goal is to establish, we have a lot of things in place for SEL, especially K through 8. The program for the high school is there, but it's not as robust. That's part of one of the goals. And then the other one is to come up with a universal reporting tool. Is that what it's called? There's a tool. Universal screening tool, that this task force will evaluate and then, make a recommendation.
Is this something we can like rotate versus have people on it?
It could be. I mean, I just think that this is important work. I think we should all be, at least attempt to be involved in, or at least informed of what it is, of what we're doing. And I don't know how many meetings are going to be. I honestly, I believe it is probably all on the calendar, but this is one of those things that we had discussed last year, implemented early on, put on hold.
Yeah.
And now,
Was this the one that was 2 dates for this year?
maybe, I'm not sure. Curriculum
I think it might have
committee was
been
2
now,
days,
yeah.
PD was 2 dates. I'm not sure.
Someone was put on hold until Mike came.
Yeah.
I believe.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a very big group. It's great. Very good discussion there.
No, thank you to Lisa Shookman for
Yes.
facilitating it.
Oh,
And she came up with a fantastic approach to identify how task force can be involved in some very important decisions that need to be made supporting the social and emotional well-being of our students. So thank you to her and for all the committee or task force participants.
Yeah, so is the committees going to use the universal screening tool to then come up with what they're gonna do from that screening tool
Later.
later?
Yeah, part of the process.
Thank you.
They also talked about trainings, free trainings. We're gonna have to share all of this. I think at some point they're gonna have to come share all of this out,
Okay.
because there are free trainings available for parents and for our students. And they're talking about using students in the school to help their peers. So there's a lot of great, there's a lot of great work here.
So if you see how some of the information we've shared over the past couple of months is connected, the district did receive a competitive grant that Ms. Shookman and administration wrote called the Recovs Grant, mental health component of that. And part of that grant was to identify a universal screener for social emotional related items. And so we're taking that competitive grant money that was received, giving the task force a specific task to help us use that money in a way that our stakeholders have input in.
So I probably should know the answer to this, but as for clarification, competitive grant, there's some number of dollars and not everyone who asks for it gets it. You actually earn it on the quality of your writing and your program planning, how you're going to implement it.
In terms of competitive grants for school districts, it's normally need-based. So number one, do you fill out the grant correctly, is the one component. And then do you qualify for that grid based upon certain demographic, information or financial based information? Great, thank you.
Thank you. All right, any other comments from the board? Any business?
Can I read this?
Yeah.
I'm just gonna read something really quickly. Based on our current financial situation, which is necessitating the cutting of student learning opportunities in order to stay within the tax cap, I would like to make a motion to reverse the decision on the implementation of the current revision of policy 5110, commonly known as YB.
Okay.
If you're supposed to ask if there's a second, and then we're supposed to discuss
Somebody
it.
can second that.
You can second it for discussion, if we want to discuss it.
All in favor?
Like,
Wanna talk about it?
yeah, can we talk about it? Okay. So I'm just gonna go through some quick bullet points of things that I wrote down. The line by line, at the line by line on 3.2, we were told that there was a 10% cut already done, and it was for things that could enhance our programs. They have been told again to do another 10% cut to help us get to the tax cap. We were also told that there would be savings, and right now our budget expenditure for the 3.2 meeting is $5.8 million, with $1.6 million of it in salaries and benefits. We would have to decimate our programs and cut a lot of staff to save the $1.3 million needed to reduce our budget to the tax cap for our line by line meeting. We also received an additional $4 million from revenue from last year. There was an additional $2.5 million in state aid, along with all of the tuition, sales tax, and everything else. How are we already getting $4 additional million and still have a $5.8 million hole? We also know now that BV will have double the amount of the economically disadvantaged children than Furnace Woods. And by making all these cuts to programs and staffing, how do we know we're going to meet their needs and ensure the district gives them the support? Back on December 6th, our tax levy was going to be 2.75% based on Princeton plan. And now we are looking at 5.79 and our tax cap is 3.98. We have to make a lot of cuts in order to get to that number. And how is that going to affect our students and their needs? In December, we were also told by the auditor that our district is in a dire situation with the $588,000 we will have left over in 2030, and we should be saving more money to soften the landing due to the drying up of the cessation fund. At this rate, we will have $0 left and we'll have an even bigger hole to fill. Think about all the good we can do if we did the tax cap and also gave our students in our community what they needed. I think we need to relook at our projections and go through this. We added an HR person on 3.2 and a technology specialist, which added another $312,000 to the budget. How are we going to continue to decrease the budget when we're adding things that are needed for the district? I also think that the lack of inclusivity and the assumption that people know that their taxes are going up is just wrong. I think Parent Square is great, but only the parents who have children in the schools are seeing those. We need to do a lot more outreach to the large portion of the Spanish population that we have and also provide more translation. I was shocked to learn at several parties this weekend that a lot of people had not even known about the change or what was going to happen to their children. We have so much work to do for our students and should be centrally focused on that. The decision on 12/6 was made with limited information and a timeline, but now you are fully aware of what this will cost the district. I ask that each member remember that we are stewards both of our district's children and its tax dollars, as well as an advocate for all students.
Are we also going to talk about maybe not doing the ELA program or the bond? I mean, if we're going to talk about everything, I mean, the ELA program is extremely expensive.
Okay. We can talk about all this. Is this really what we want?
I don't, I'm just saying.
I don't know. I mean,
I'm
I don't
just-
think we want to talk about not doing the ELA program. And I don't think we want to talk about not doing the bond.
I think we've kind of already discussed all of this and vetted it out. But
I don't know why we brought it to this table. If kindly, I feel like you should have shared this, that you were going to talk about this. We come here with the idea that there are no surprises. So this is something that we have stated over and over again as a board, and you did not share. So that is a little bothersome, quite honestly. But I know how you feel. Like, you've made your point. Like, I'm not saying I agree with you. I'm just saying you told us how you feel now. I don't really have anything to change, so I'm
Well, I guess my question is there an assumption that whether we realign the elementary model from an attendance perspective or not, that there's an additional expense assigned to it? Because when we discuss elementary realignment, the conversation was always, and when I say the conversation, I mean from the first day it ever started. Forget whether there's benefit to alignment or not, right? Not a discussion for now, in my opinion, based on the conversation you're asking to have. But for me, I haven't seen a single document or information outside of a one-time cost of moving, which is $200,000 once, that indicates that there are additional staff required in this model that we're intending to move to in September versus the model that we sit in today. So to utilize the budget and this difference in our anticipated expenses and assign the additional budget gap to the reallocation of our attendance policy, I'm missing where that works, because if I get it right, we are -1 FTE, if I understand the different pieces that have come together, which says that net, this is a reduction in expense, not an increase. So how does not changing it help close a gap?
So if you go back to the 12-6 projections that Enrique gave us, we were at 2.75%, which is what was based on the Princeton plan review. He was really.
No.
I'm still speaking for 1 second, okay? We have asked, and I'm gonna ask right now that the administration, because of where we are at with our tax cap at the current state that they're in, we don't know where teachers are gonna be placed. We don't know what the cuts need to be done that's gonna facilitate that. We don't know where the dollar amount is coming from, and we're at 5.79 right now. And I think in order for us to adopt a budget on the 27th, it's irresponsible of us if we don't ask these questions when it's going to impact our seniors.
So I actually think it's irresponsible to bring this up without, and ask us to waive this, overturn something. First, without sharing ahead of time, so we were prepared to respond to you, because that's board rule number 1. Respect. The first thing you're taught in board training is the no surprises rule. That is a huge piece of communication and how you build trust in a board. So you have blown that sitting here, number 1. Number 2, it is irresponsible to say that we have gone from a 2 point whatever percent to a 5 whatever percent right now, because again, I don't know the specifics based on that, when between that time, we identified nearly $2 million of expenses that we did not know prior to December 6th. Is that correct?
But we
Just line by line.
But we now know, and my point is,
But you
and
cannot, let me
just to
finish,
speak
no,
to
no, let me
you,
finish.
I'll let you
finish.
finish, I'll let
Let
you
me finish.
finish, I'll let you finish.
There is zero proof that has been shown to the public or to the board that there is a $1.2 million expense in Plan B. There is no proof and no evidence. So right now, you could wipe your hands of it and still be at the same number of FTEs. There is no, Tamika, there's no difference in it's $200,000 one-time expense and whatever the FTEs are. And we did a line by line by line by line budget. We're not finding $1.2 million in Plan B.
I am obligated to support this decision, but I'm also obligated not to support going over the tax cap and decimating this district. And it's also my responsibility as a board member to look for viable savings that can save this district.
Show us the
We are
savings.
not, but that's my
That's
whole
what-
point.
show us
We
the
have
savings.
requested, and I am gonna request that this board gets the projections, if we stay in Plan B, what our cap is going to look like. Because I'm still trying to understand.
Tamika, can we talk
Can I
nice
just-
to each other?
No, I'm gonna talk
You're
nice. I
yelling
just-
at Mike, I
I'm not
think.
yelling, okay?
You are.
Okay, so you think I'm yelling?
I would just ask that we talk nice to
Okay.
each other.
So what I'm gonna ask is for those projections to be available to all the board members, because when we made our decision on December 6th, it was based on a $747,000 delta of what we were given, right? The moving costs have already out the water for that from before. So my point is, if we are going to go forward as a district and as a board, we should have all of those information. On Saturday at our meeting, we were told they wouldn't know where the cuts are gonna come from yet to present to us, but somehow we are going to adopt a budget on the 27th.
No.
Right?
Wait, hold on, time out. Maybe Mike should speak.
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify one thing I think that she's saying, that, she's asking for is on Saturday, we didn't know where, when you were looking at the efficiencies, we don't know which, because we got a breakdown of how many teachers are in each department at each building. Right now, what we got on Saturday was status quo because you were looking at it, but we didn't get an update on that. So if, I believe she's asking for, an update on the FTEs per building and per department.
So we, in general terms, Enrique's projections at the beginning of December, the end of December that Don Hoffman presented with him, were based upon our best knowledge at that time. The budget that you have seen since January has come from developing with our administration the best program that we think we are to offer. And then this is the time when we pare down before the board adoption of that budget to get within the parameters of what the board would like to see. So at this time, we are actively looking at where we can make cuts to that proposed budget. It may not be a cut from budget to budget because we know it won't, right? We have contractually obligated expenses that will go up. And within the tax cap, we're in a fortunate situation where our tax cap is such that it's above 2%. And we know if most of our contractual expenses from year to year are greater than 2%, there's normally a delta you have to make up anyway. So we have not identified 100% because the scheduling process is not done at the high school and the middle school.
So
for next year.
I'm sorry, I'll let you finish.
We're still in the process of making cuts. I could come to the table and say, this is the progress we've made thus far, but I want to make sure the team is all on the same page with where we are, and we haven't had a chance to do that since Saturday.
So we've already done the 10% for enhancements for Saturday's meeting, right? That's reflected in the budget we have from 2/7.
That was a temp, we clarified that on Saturday. That was a 10% of, we asked them to give us their wishes, what they really wanted, but clearly we can't afford that, whether, doesn't matter what plan we're in. So Mike had to give them directive to go back. They were explained that on Saturday.
I understand that, but they already did 10% for the enhancements for the budgets that the buildings had submitted. And then we are now telling them to go back and do another 10% cut, correct? To get us, no?
Not at
Okay.
this time.
So,
There's only been one, there's been various times when we've gone back and say, cut your supplies and materials. The last directive that was given to the buildings and departments prior that I do not believe was reflected in the line by line and the budget book was that 10% to go back.
Because it was
And
February 1st.
my question,
Go ahead.
I'm sorry, my other question was, if they go back and they cut staff and we're contractually obligated for certain things and we can't get to the cap, then what do we do as a board, since we don't have that information yet?
Can you explain what you're asking?
If the 10% isn't enough to get to the cap?
Correct.
To get down to the.
If we can't get down to the cap as a board based on contracts and things that we do not know yet, right? What happens then? Because we're gonna go ahead and adopt a budget, right? On the 27th, and we have no information, well, whether contractually we can meet that number that we're trying to get to.
I guess my question is, what you're raising good points, but what does this have to do with Plan B specifically?
Again, Erica,
I don't know, be very
I have
specific.
asked.
Because now you're going against the board. You're going against the board right now. As in
I
you are,
am-
yes, you are. So explain to me
You're
how
you're
Plan
gonna,
B,
I have
your-
already,
all of
I
your
have,
great
I have
points,
already
all of
stated,
your great
I
points.
have already stated all of the things that I've asked for. So I am asking
Tamika.
that there's a public presentation of what staying in Princeton plan would look like for our tax cap, so that this board can make an informed decision with the knowledge, because I feel like, yes, we made a decision on December 6th, but it has changed vastly from them. Even Saturday, we were given a HR person that's now needed, that's an extra $200,000.
On Saturday,
that-
Tamika, you are putting out, I'm sorry, this is the
That's-
problem,
wait,
you are putting
HR
out
has nothing to
information.
do with
HR has nothing to do with this, we've been
It has
discussing
to
this
do,
for a
it
year.
has to do with the budget. So my whole point is, we're trying to reduce on one end, and then we're adding at the
You
same vein
supported
with the
adding it
other.
multiple times.
I support adding HR, absolutely, because what's been done shouldn't be done right now. So yes, I support an HR person, but my whole point again, Erica, is how are we getting to that tax cap number that we're trying to get to without understanding all of the ramifications that could come
I know,
with that?
but this was a very, my point is making a motion to reverse the policy has very little to do with the concerns you actually are raising. So,
That's your perspective on it.
well,
I think
okay.
that
That's
can
my
I,
perspective.
can
Can
you
you
just
just clarify
share?
to the public at home that I think saying, I mean, I know we're trying to get under the tax cap right now, but our projections for the next 10 years have us exceeding that tax cap. And we know that there are gonna have to be cuts.
And it has
So
the last
it
10
has
years
to-
prior.
But this has nothing to do with Plan B or Princeton plan, what we're in right now. So to say, like, are you saying that you want for the next 10 years to always, you owe it to the seniors
Can
to
I,
stay in the tax cap?
let's just back up one
Do
second.
you want to
okay?
stay in
Can
the
you-
tax cap
let's
for
just stop
every year?
1 second, okay? Because if you go back to Enrique's projections that he did, he has been using a 2% increase, which should not be used, because it's not enough to cover everything that needs to happen. We all know that as a board, but my whole point is, if you're already going to 5.9 or 5.79, right? How do we get to saving that money that we need so that we're not left with $588,000 in 2030 if we're spending this much money this year already?
I have a feeling that some of what we're looking at, and please correct me if I'm misunderstanding, is people asking for far more money as a wish list than they would have asked
Yes.
if we did a budget to budget comparison. The point is, when Enrique did his presentation initially, he based it on a budget to budget adjustment. When we went to zero-based budgeting, we gave our staff, and we, meaning Mike, gave his staff the opportunity to say, what would you want to do everything you can possibly do? And that created a massive differential in expense from what was projected in October or November. Forget December 6th for a moment, because I don't think that's related in any capacity. I think we're gonna, I think we're gonna find that it's gonna be a long-term neutral or maybe a reduction. We'll see what happens when they give the FTE presentation. But I think what happened was, in this zero-based budgeting exercise, we said, what would you like? Some people said, I want to drive a BMW. And we just said, well, you currently have something else and we're not going to take away your car, but maybe you don't get to upgrade it now. So that's where the cuts are necessarily coming from. Let's save the FTE cuts from an efficiency perspective as a tabled conversation, because that's not necessarily related to the budget. What's related to the budget is people asking for money that they don't have today, that's at a far greater number than if we just did the consistent rollover budget, which is what all of the projections were based on. And then, so we're now giving people a chance to rewrite the story and then find out, how do we keep what we have and what enhancements can be made to further better the educational experience? And that's where this differential is coming from. It's not as if we're telling them, you have all these new obligations and you can't spend $1 and you have to cut what you have where you were here and now you're going to be providing less. It's we're here, they asked to go here, and we're suggesting they need to be somewhere in the middle.
So if that's the case,
If I understand this
I would like,
conversation.
so I go back to, because I would say our meeting from December 6th reflected Princeton plan, right? That's my understanding of it. You have your own understanding of what it reflected in those dollar amounts, because they didn't request anything yet. What I'm asking of this board to do is to ask for the projections of what it would cost this district to stay in the plan that we're in, based on the fact that we are currently over the tax cap, and present it. That's all I'm asking to do.
So
The projection won't change because it's FTEs.
It will change,
Also,
Erica,
big
because
projection.
we have one student at Furnace Woods that's gonna be an ICT student. You still have to service them. There's also one ENL student at Furnace Woods now, where you have the majority at BP, you still have to service that student. So now we're talking about another ENL teacher that
Yeah,
needs
no,
to
traveling.
travel. She's traveling.
Just like
Okay,
the music
but my
teacher
whole-
in Chicago.
But my
Like
whole
they're
point
traveling now.
is, right,
Traveling now.
I would like to see, and this board should be interested, given where we are on March sixth with our budget, they should want to see that. And
No, I think we
I
do.
implore the board to read an article that was put in the Examiner yesterday about what's happening in Carmel right now, because it's quite interesting. And I think everybody that's at home should read that. The board members here should also read it. And again, I ask for the projections to be presented so that we can make an informed decision with the actual information in front of us instead of just the budgetary numbers that we were given in December.
Are you talking about them losing state aid?
Excuse me one second. I don't have it in front of me. Again, I wasn't prepared for this conversation, but we were projecting, we were wildly different on expected income and revenues, not income, revenues. Like, we've learned over time how pilots are gonna change. That's a lot of money.
Do you know?
So you're acting like
Do
we're
you know what-
overspending.
Do you know what's
Yeah.
interesting about that you say that, Alexis? The presentation from December to what we have now, we actually got more money from state aid and still
No,
we
I
are
didn't
over
say
the
state
tax
aid.
cap.
I did not say.
But
state
from
aid.
our revenues, from what was
You know,
presented
I
in
actually am
December.
asking, I'd like to make a motion to table this conversation for when we all have the information, when Enrique is here present with us,
Mhm.
because I think there's an interesting dynamic happening. And we can actually make educated conversation, because I feel like
Hilarious.
we're, what, I'm sorry?
Don't, please, yeah.
I can't do this.
People.
I just don't think that any of us are prepared. Mike's not
That is
prepared.
true, we're not
I don't have,
prepared.
I don't have
Okay, so
any
let's not,
financials.
right?
You came with a conversation that nobody was prepared to have, so I'm
I came with
asking.
a conversation of something that I wanted to discuss during new business at this
Yeah,
table,
but we can't
which
have
I
an
am
educated
allowed to do
conversation
as
about
a
it.
board member.
But you didn't,
When I
you did
have
it to
to-
undermine.
Yeah.
That is what's wrong. You
Why-
did it
why?
purposely
That's how
No,
you're
no,
taking it,
This
Jen.
is Jen 2024, just like you.
Okay,
This
so
is
you're
annoying.
not
You are
wrong.
undermining this entire
so
board. For what reason?
Okay.
What reason? I don't
What
understand.
reason? I am trying
We
to
have
understand
all
how
worked
we're
very
getting to the tax
hard.
cap.
So
Like, how are we,
ask it.
is that not concerning?
Then
to
ask,
you?
That is
ask the
what-
projections.
Is that
That's
not
nothing to do
concerning
with
to
Plan
you?
It has
B.
nothing to do with
It
that.
has to do everything with it,
doesn't.
because then we need to
You are
understand what
making it
we're
about
doing.
it.
You're making
So
it about
that's your, that's
You
your
are like,
opinion.
you know,
You're
That's your
framing it
opinion.
around what
That's your
you
opinion.
want it to be. This is
There's
your
so much more
interest,
to it.
this is what you want, and I get it. Because it takes a long time to be on the board and let go of that.
I
So,
honestly,
you know what? I am with Jen, and I am with you, and I second the motion, because I have worked and given up way too many hours, and we have done too much and gone too far.
and I understand the time and the effort everybody has put in on this board before I arrived here. But what I'm not gonna do, and what I'm not willing to do, is walk off of a cliff with everyone, knowing that I see something
Well, I'm not
glaringly
willing to go
red.
backwards.
Okay, so then
Okay.
don't. I'm just saying, now that you have all the information, everybody can do their vote based on that information now that's at hand. So I ask again that the projections based on Princeton plan be compared and circulated to the board and to the community, so we all know where we stand.
So you should, so in the future, you could have just asked for that. It would have been a lot simpler.
I'm sorry, Erica. I did ask for
You did
it
not.
weeks ago.
You did not.
Okay?
You did not.
Okay,
You did
that's, again,
Show me.
that's, yeah, I can show it to you.
You know what? This is just a prime example of what has happened in
The community.
at the community, and we have gone forward. And we have done a lot of good work going forward and letting going our personal agendas. Some of us, not all of us, and I second the motion to table it. And can I get
So-
another person? All in favor?
All in favor.
Are we expecting to have updated projections at the next meeting? I know that we have a presenter.
Yes, we can have updated projections. We'll get the updated projections both from the financials and also FTE to compare in current structure and in next year's adopted policy currently. I will also say this. We have a budget parameter of getting below the tax cap. So that's the charge that we have as the administration. And just a reminder that we do present to the public and the board to adopt a spending plan. What that looks like, a spending amount, so a total amount. What that looks like can change based on district needs on July 1st, right? So we provide those details of what our best thinking is that make up that whatever fund amount will get us under the tax cap. Just in general terms, to provide transparency on what that number is. So we try to stick to that the best we can, but there could be something that does change our expenditures based upon that plan proposal. But we will get that information.
Thank you. Thank you. I motion to close the meeting.
Right here.
Second.
All in favor?